Too much orange. What's going on, everyone? If you've been sick of seeing SCX24s, then you're in luck, because this isn't one of those. This is a new AX24. And this is a bit of a throwback to Axial's roots. One of Axial's very first vehicles was the AX10, and it was a twin vertical plate, competitive or, performance first RC rock crawler. And this takes the popularity of the SCX24 or the 24 scale in general, and it's a bit of a grab at the market of how people are taking those SCX24s and trying to turn them into just as performance minded as they possibly can, trying to build them up and kind of letting go of a lot of the scale looks in some ways and just the name of performance and doing what they can. And this is an out of the box option for people who want to go that direction. Now, what you see from the outside here is the new XC1 body in the 124 scale size. This body was originally released in basically this exact same form, same color, livery, stickers, everything, in a 110 scale body in 2007. So it was on Axial's almost ready to run platform. So it was a pre-built truck, no electronics in it. Later they released it in a green flavor on a ready to run version, but that didn't come until a little bit later down the road. Now, underneath of this body is an all new chassis. The body's held on with Velcro. So you can remove the front and then the rear portion is hinged on there, but it's also still held on with Velcro. So you can remove it completely by just, yanking it off there in general. Velcro's not my favorite for body mounts, but it gets the job done, especially 124 scale. Underneath though, you'll see that it's got a twin vertical plate style chassis. That's a term that's been used in RC crawling for many, many years. And basically what it means is it's two aluminum plates, one on each side, and that gives you all of the mounting positions for your skid plate, shocks, other pieces and parts, things like that. Rather than having a C-channel or scale type frame rail, this is what you have. Now, one of the other big differences beyond the all new chassis is the fact that this comes with four-wheel steering. The four-wheel steering is controlled by the Spectrum SLT3 radio. Rather than having one of the other radios that came with the 24 scales over time, you get a full Spectrum radio. And I've said before that this radio is really comfortable. I actually enjoy this radio for an RTR radio, but the rear steer is controlled with this button here that you would use your thumb with. If you go downward, then when you steer, it goes opposite. That's kind of the way that a lot of people traditionally think about four-wheel steer. If you go up one, it's back to the center point, and that's just front steering. If you hit up again, then you get crab walk, where all tires steer in the same direction. Now, this isn't Axial's first four-wheel steer vehicle. They released the Capper four-wheel steer a little over a year ago, and it used rear steer a little bit differently, a little bit more of the comp style method. I think this is gonna be a better method probably for mass market. This is what people kind of first envision when they think four-wheel steer, and probably the reasoning that they went with it, and probably best, for the market that is going to be using these, at least the stock versions out of the box. The tires on this are 2.44 inches or 62 millimeters tall. So they're a much taller version that has come on other Axial 24 scales in the past. They're patterned after the Rock Lizard tire, which was Axial's very first tire. It's actually not the tire that came with the XC1 in the 110 scale. That one actually came with Proline hammers, if I remember right. Axial didn't used to make all of their own tires. They used to use a lot of Proline's tires before they were owned by the same company. So fun fact for you. A lot of the parts on here are going to be familiar to you. The axles, basically just like the SCX24. Obviously you have steering at both ends compared to the way that you are used to seeing it out of the box. But building four-wheel steer SCX24s is nothing new either. The servo mounts on these axles though are different than the standard SCX24 stuff. And that's because the link geometry on this little chassis is different than an SCX24 as well. The skid plate is much wider and it's almost identical to the style of the original AX10 one, down to the grooves that are in it, the whole deal. It's very reminiscent of that original chassis. Now, the original chassis didn't have these molded boat sides like this one does, but This added those, which helps retain the body. It actually tucks the body inside of them, so it keeps it nice and planted on there. And it incorporates some LED rock light pods. So you can see those, they're shining at the camera. I've got one that's bad out of the box. Hopefully that's an isolated issue and not something that many people run into, but in my case, it was there. Now, when you don't have a long ladder frame chassis, you also can run out of real estate for certain items. You don't have all of that length to make trays and positions. So we had to put the battery somewhere in here. And this uses the same size battery as was previously used on the SCX24. This time it's retained in this little compartment here. So there's a single body clip, only body clip on this vehicle actually. So you pull that body clip out, you fold this little door up, and then you can pull the battery out. Now it's the same 350 milliamp 2S LiPo battery that you're going to be very familiar with seeing. It is up a little bit high, so it does raise the center of gravity a little bit at the same time. I'm sure guys who are going to be hyper focused on performance may find a place or a smaller battery that will improve their capabilities even a little bit further. The 2-in-1 ESC receiver sits on the very top of the chassis. As is expected, it's a pretty decent sized unit. It is branded as a Spectrum piece, and it's got both servos plugged into it as well as the little plug for the rock lights. The front servo does require an extension to get everything on there. The wiring underneath of this body, it looks a little hectic. It's just kind of all over in there. Also the receiver antenna isn't necessarily retained, so mine kept kind of peeking out from underneath of the body. Kind of need to, just get it moved around and folded and tucked in somewhere, it feels like. But wiring, not the cleanest, but not that big of a deal. Another big difference when taking the AX24 and comparing it to like an SCX24 is the length of the shocks that come on this. This is a extremely long shock. With the shocks fully extended, the measurement from eye to eye on them looks like it's around 51, 52 millimeters long. So a significant increase in length. There is no damping to these at all, so it's very bouncy, but it also has a ton of flex. You can easily get 3 inches of flex with this, so if that's something that you really like to see, you'll be happy when you pull this out of the nice little box that they send this in. Along with the release of the AX24, Axial is also releasing a bunch of hop-up parts that will go right along with it. You'll be able to replace those aluminum chassis side plates with carbon fiber. They also have a ton of brass options coming, including diff covers, knuckle weights, servo mounts, and a skid plate. The wheelbase on this car is very similar to the SCX24s at 136 millimeters roughly. The four-wheel steering on this definitely makes it much more maneuverable. Desktop crawling, if that is something you're after, this is going to be a lot easier to drive as far as getting around tight spaces, things like that. It's a big benefit, especially in tight areas, and it's just another layer of performance on its own anyway, so it's something I think you'll enjoy. There are some of the same issues that you probably run into with SCX24s in the past that are present on this as well. Most notably, power. It's got the same motor that you're used to seeing, and that can feel a little bit underpowered at times. It can take a lot more throttle input than you think it should use before it'll actually get moving, which can definitely be annoying when you're trying to crawl around some objects. The servos feel quite responsive. They're fast, they move these large tires quickly. I've got no complaints there. The long shocks with the very light springs and with four-wheel steer can make for a combination that kind of makes this car want to curl up on itself a little bit at times, depending on the type of things you're crawling around. Something that I noticed. That is something where some weight in the wheels or on the knuckles definitely going to help keep this thing feeling a lot more planted. But that may make the whole power thing even more evident. So mods that are common for the 124 scale SCXs, you're gonna see all of them here and more, I'm sure. I feel like this was kind of a no-brainer for Axial. People are going for performance with these little platforms. The aftermarket has absolutely exploded around them, and they've got a heritage that shines in this type of area. Is it perfect? Nope. But Is it a super fun little start to a platform that a lot of you are already super familiar with and you're gonna just go nuts with another option? Yep. I haven't always been a 124 scale fan, but four-wheel steer has a tendency to win me over in a lot of cases. So for that, this is, I think, most definitely my favorite 124 scale. So I'm sure that means that I'll dive in and order way too many parts and change all kinds of things just because they put four-wheel steer on one out of the box. Is this the type of 24 scale that you're after? Or are you still the SCX24 customer? You like the scale looks, the scale body options, and everything that that platform has to offer? Or are you gonna convert over to this style because maybe you've already been building them similar to it? Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'm gonna play around with my AX24 a little bit more. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe if you're not already, hit the notification bell so you see the videos as soon as they get uploaded. Thanks as always for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.